Hello, everyone, to another episode on the blueSquad on health. As usual, we are joined today by Dr. Carsten Dancer and Dr. Andreas Müller from the European side. I am Shameem Hameed, CEO of blueBriX. So, guys, we have been thinking a lot about AI, and of course, we can't escape the AI discussions going on everywhere. And there has been so much hype, and then suddenly Apple drops this paper. And so I thought we should have some thoughts on what they have done, but I'll just quickly recap on what they said. And essentially, the summary of the paper, of course, using AI, it says there are four main points. One is a complete accuracy collapse in high complexity tasks. Then counterintuitive effort reduction or work shy behavior. Pattern matching, not true reasoning. And fundamental scaling limitation. So when it talks about complete accuracy collapse in high complexity tasks, advanced large reasoning models designed to mimic reasoning steps perform well on simple and medium puzzles, but fail entirely on high complexity tasks, with accuracy dropping to zero. That's the first point we're talking about. The second one is actually counterintuitive effort reduction or work shy behavior. As problems grow harder, the LRMs paradoxically reduce their reasoning effort. Even when given enough computational toggles, it's as if they give up before tackling the harder steps. Then the third one, I think we talked about this a long time ago, about pattern recognition. It's not really AI, it's basically looking at probabilities and patterns. So it's not true reasoning. These models rely heavily on pattern recognition rather than genuine logical deduction. They excel at simulating reasoning, but lack actual cognitive structure. And then fundamental scaling limitations. So simply increasing model size, compute, or data doesn't fix the collapse, pointing to architectural, not just performance barriers towards AGI. So the implication is that, are you pouring a lot of money on a flawed foundation? So that's pretty much what they are talking about. And everybody is to the races. You're spending $500 billion for Stargate in one end, $80 billion for Microsoft, $100 billion by Elon Musk on Grok. All these investments, more than trillions of dollars coming into this thing. Are we really on the right path? So start of that discussion. Dr. Müller.
Thank you, Sam. It's a very difficult question, I think. I think the question at the end of the day is there, and bringing this back, is there a first principle in physics or in our nature which will limit all these activities? And I think having read through this article, there are a couple of things which raised my interest, and one was this aspect with this. There is this how is it called, Towers of Hanoi puzzle, which they gave the different AI models as a challenge to solve. And the message that they overthink on easy puzzles by they short their reasoning on hard ones. And I was thinking about this a little bit and asked myself, if we put 100 people randomly selected into one room and give them similar puzzles to solve, what will happen? And probably more or less the same thing will happen. Because what is happening here And I'm asking, I didn't find this analysis. I ask myself, is there a correlation with availability in training data for these models? So are they overthinking where there is a lot of data, where they have been mainly trained? And are they running short on intellectual capability, actually, where they have little or where they are little backed up by specific input data? And I believe if you take 100 people randomly selected in a room, the same thing will happen. You will have certain people who are capable of going through a learning curve, thinking outside the box, exploring new areas, new ideas, new concepts. And the majority of people, they will apply what they learned in the past, and they will hit the ceiling where they were not trained before or where they were never exposed before. Right?
So what I'm hearing from you is it's kind of mimicking human behavior is what you're saying. But I also thought that kind of contradicts also your initial statement about it mimicking human behavior. So in the one hand, you're saying that it is, but on the other hand, you're saying if they don't have enough training data, it cannot, do anything more with that. That's pretty much what it is saying. So it is validating that point where it has to have recognized patterns or probabilities in existing data to come to a result. But the human intellect, the mimicking of the human, that's where I'm trying to just stay with me on this. Human beings are adept at finding solutions, not necessarily based on the knowledge that they have pre-existing, right? They're able to take more than that and arrive at new models or new thinking based on whatever it is experience they had. So I'm kind of trying to understand a little bit. So a person who hasn't had a lot of education, there is a certain amount of intelligence within him, irrespective of the knowledge that he has gained through reading books or going to college. There is a foundational intellect in that. What this study basically is trying to show is that the current models doesn't have that foundational intellect. It's always based on what it has digested and whatever patterns it has recognized. But AGI that they are saying we are close to in months or even in years requires the other format, right? And that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. Dr. Dancer?
I also, that's very interesting. I mean, because we were all thinking separately on that publication, and I was also thinking about comparing the result with humans. Because actually, we should also not forget the machines we are talking about, and it's just machines. In one or the other way, they're a bit more sophisticated than a tractor, maybe. But they are human-made, they're man-made. And eventually, how they behave is a bias of the people which have basically decided this on the design. And I'm not sure if the outcome of the publication or the conclusions of the publication are just a simple setting as that the outcome is a result of the input and is a result of the design. I'm not sure about it. I'm just putting it in room. There was a thought of mine. The data point, or the point what Andreas brought up with the data, that might be a cause. And if you go and say, because the machines are designed to somehow mimic the human brain, to even augment or be better than the human brain. So if you think about...
I will interrupt. It is not designed. It is hoped that that is going to be the outcome. If we are talking about the design of it, is it actually meeting those objectives? So
that the guys, that's the design. The guys which build it or are building it, their idea is to have that as an outcome. Yes, but so the overall design of it is intended to be that. Yeah. It's not necessarily there because we're all aware it's an iterative process to be there. It's not there yet. But if you also think about human brain development or training, it's a muscle. You have to train it, and eventually, if you have not reached the right step in your training, it's like, take a simple thing. If you want to run a marathon or something like that, and you have eventually trained on a 1K, 5K, 10K, you might not be ready to run the marathon because you need different skills. You need your mental setting right so that you can run that long and so on and so forth. There's different parameters which might be not there yet in these already for these complex scenarios where basically the system failed and went into a simplification. If I again take that fact of simplification, there was one famous guy which said, if you cannot explain it simple, you have not understood it properly. And that was a quite smart guy, I would say, but exactly that's the thing what we're doing. The moment human brains or humans, and then the example is Andreas and the 100 people, I would agree, the ones which stand out and are able to deal with complex scenarios and work on them, their main capability, I would say, is to understand it good enough to take out the complexity in order to simplify it and then move ahead another step and go in that way of learning and not being lost in the complexity. And that also what Andreas says, if you put 100 people in a room, there's a lot of people which will overwork on simple things because we believe it's complex and at the end it's not. It's just simple. So I see a lot of, say, analogies comparing the outcome to the humans. I'm not judging and I cannot draw a conclusion right now, but I just see that. And then I would like to discuss with you today what your opinions are on that.
While you were speaking, if I may just say this, right, I was thinking, the human beings have, at least, I don't know what categorization I should bring into it. There are three aspects of it, right? One, there is intelligence. Then there is knowledge. Then there is wisdom, right? So there are these three aspects. Now, when I'm looking at what the current crop of AI models are doing is they have all the knowledge in the world. That is, basically, they are giving them all the information and then asking it to look for the patterns within it and then being able to generate within that. I don't think it still has got to the level of true intelligence. And of course, wisdom is something else, right? It's the summary of all our mistakes is wisdom. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I just want to connect it with human interactions. But go on, Andreas.
I think there are a couple of aspects in here. So one thing you're saying with data, information, knowledge, wisdom, and so on. The thing is that maybe what we are observing here is an illusion of thinking. It's maybe kind of these systems have been trained to do something which is similar to thinking. And it's maybe more kind of pattern-driven mimicry rather than a robust and generalizable logic. Yeah. And many of these systems, they take impressive reasoning traces. Yeah? But does it lead somewhere? And I think that the philosophical concept underlying is what is the purpose of knowledge? The purpose of knowledge is not having more knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is understanding something based on knowledge and putting it into action. I think there was famous philosopher Aristoteles or somebody who said that. Yeah. So the purpose of knowledge is not knowledge, it's action. Yeah? And when we look at these AI systems today, they provide you with access to a lot of knowledge. They are kind of these omnicompetent knowledge bases. Yeah. And they are not, or not yet in certain areas, maybe a little bit in one way or the other, good or bad, but they are not yet a participant in that social interaction which defines at the end of the day our intelligence and our progress and so on. Yeah. I think the other misconception maybe is we are waiting for this omnicompetent artificial intelligence. And although they are maybe a very small percentage of people who are very competent in depth and in breadth of many different fields and topics and ways of life and so on, there is nobody on earth who is totally omnicompetent. At least that's what I believe. So there are limitations in all these things. And with the models which have been assessed in this study, they claim being omnicompetent. Yeah? And that's maybe the fundamental struggle or the underlying struggle in the whole story. Yeah.
No, I agree with what you're saying. So I think what we are all right now talking about is the claim of achieving artificial general intelligence, right? So that's what you're saying. It's omnicompetent and omniscient, all these kind of things, right? So that is, they are trying to achieve that based on the training models or strategies that they have used to create this large language models. Now, if you look at it purely, and I may be saying something stupid here, but who cares? I'm old enough to say whatever I want, right, at this stage. So large language models were for language. So it's how you use the language. You have over, let's say, 1,200 years of language data since the time things were written down in human history. They have taken that and they are pretty good at simulating conversations based on these patterns, because human beings, even you and I, whenever you look at the television, right, whenever somebody is dead or some massacre happens, the politicians come also and say, oh, our hearts and prayers are with them. Or whenever we talk to people in common parlance, we pick up general phrases, which is all probabilistic. Even our own brain uses that. So in large language models, it is working, right? Now, when that AGI, when that success of large language models is now touted as, oh, we are very close to general intelligence, that is where I think it is breaking down. So, for instance, AI models that are really good for radiology, right? There are segment-wise AI tools that are really good at doing those kind of things much better and much efficient way than human beings. But the paper on Apple, which is something that the reason I wanted to talk about it is something, confirmation bias for me, because I always thought this is kind of a probabilistic pattern recognition kind of a thing. True intelligence is not common. And so the AGIs, at least based upon all these things, and in the absence of any other information that I have digested, I'm still I'm still in agreement with the Apple researchers, and there's a lot of very reputed researchers who contributed to that paper. Now, I use ChatGPT for a lot of things. In fact, day by day, things are really improving. Their voice mode, it is not the same that I used 2 weeks ago. It has become really, really, really advanced. And so one of the exercises I did was I wanted to create a paper on a recruitment strategy for my company, right? Because I was thinking the current traditional methods were not working. So I said, okay, let's have a conversation, you and I, like two individuals, and you can, poke holes in what I'm saying. So I spent about 2-3 days conversing with it on that particular chap. And during that whole time on individual bits and pieces, it was able to give me very good answers. And at the end of the day, I asked it to put it in a report format so that I can really share it with my team. It wasn't as successful as one would expect from a highly qualified assistant who would have done that, right? And I'm thinking where there's too many permutations of combinations and logics in that. And then I'm looking at this Apple paper, I'm thinking, is it because of that? So that has been my experience. I don't know, are you guys using these kind of things? Or?
Yeah, sure. I think we are all using ChatGPT or similar solutions on a daily basis to help us. And for me also, like, if we are talking about these kind of tools, it's tools. What are we going to use them for? And that's the intention. And also about the intelligence, like let's talk about the definition of intelligence. Yeah. We can look it up on Wikipedia and read it out. I don't know what it is right now, but there is certainly a definition of intelligence. I think also that what you're asking, I think that what the human brain, the key fundamental function of a healthy human brain is to forget and to delete things and focus on the relevant stuff. And maybe that's what you also saw in your example with interacting with GPT, that you had too many permutations, too many things going on over those 2 days. And the system was struggling to figure out or to separate relevant from irrelevant things. And eventually at the moment, sometimes I'm doing things and then I just 3 days later or so, I want to continue in the same chat and I provided data and so on and so forth. And due to data minimization, maybe GDPR reasons or God knows what, the system tells me, I don't know what you were telling me before. I forgot the things are erased and so on and so forth, which is fine. It's okay if it gets rid of information. But the point is here, that was the wrong thing to delete because I wanted to continue the information, the conversation, because I had a thought process 3 days later, whereas I want to follow up on that and I want to continue the conversation. If I do that with a human, the human hopefully had, say, if it's an assistant, he or she had realized that was an important conversation. Otherwise, I would not have held the conversation with the person. So the person would have memorized at least parts. And then maybe there's too many things going on that you give a quick reminder what it was the topic about, and then the person will know. Essentially, additional processing while we were not interacting. So the human brain, and at least mine, works like this. It never stops working. And then, like maybe days later, I go for a run or I sit on the bike or whatever. And then suddenly something comes up and my brain starts processing, even though the context is not there anymore. And that's the thing where I think the intelligence part is getting rid of the irrelevant things and processing it in eventually other contexts and start thinking about it. And I think that's the real intellect in some way to be able to compute in the human brain non-connected relationships and understand different concepts or put concepts in different contexts. And I think That's what at least somehow my understanding is the publication says, that the systems are not able to go to that level.
I think ChatGPT started rolling out memory recently. So at least in my plan, I've taken the super plan, $200 a month plan. It doesn't have any problem with the memory. So even if I have multiple chats, I can ask it about, hey, remember that chat we had about this thing? And it'll say, yes, we discussed about these things. So I think they have improved on that part now.
I think to your example with kind of your HR strategy or something, or your HR best practice or hiring strategy, what was it?
Recruitment.
Yeah, I think what you're experiencing as well, and I think that's interesting. If you read the response to that Apple paper by one of the cited AI models by Anthropic, the developers of the Claude model. Yeah. The thing is a little bit, I think, on one hand, interacting with these systems, you work on context and so on, like you would with colleagues, with other people as well. You need to provide them context. If you want to learn something in one direction, you need to drive that context into that direction. And that's what you're doing in your prompting activity. Yeah. And if you then ask to summarize, it sort of takes this all under consideration without probably having understood where you were moving. Because it's all content needs to be processed. It's all content which needs to be taken into consideration. Maybe that's the thing. And if you read,
he was giving it in garbage and he's giving it garbage back, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying a little bit. I mean, it also brings me back to the statement before. If through the process you generate more noise, you have more noise in the system, which will perturb the final outcome of the process you interacting with the AI. But what Anthropic said in response to that paper, it's in a blog article on their website. They say that on the complex problem, these models were penalized in the test, stopping output because they were running off resources. And that's why they performed with a lack of reasoning on complex problems and so on. If you read the Apple article, it's exactly what they claim not having done. So they claim having given the AI maximum all resources possible, and they didn't use it to the maximum of the potential. Huh? So this is kind of a strange answer. On the other hand, I think about this. I mean, we are always operating under circumstances of limited resources. So if such models need infinite resources in order to best perform, this is a very costly business model, and you could ask every entrepreneur whether he would engage into the story where his most intelligent product people tell him, we need all money of this world in order to win in the market or something. Yeah, this will just not happen. Yeah. And the second thing I wanted to say in this context is they claim also maybe the prompts and whatever were not good enough and so on. I mean, that's the other thing. If the solution is always in, your prompting is not correct, you need to be better on prompting and so on. I mean, we need this in interaction with people, with teams, with whatever. We need to improve our communications style in order to achieve the results we want to have. That's pretty clear. But, that prompt engineering at the end of the day is the solution of our problems, I'm not so sure. And there is another blog article I found on LinkedIn, having thought a little bit about this Apple paper. And this guy clearly says AI progress won't come from more training or longer prompts. It will probably rather come from different architecture and blending classical systems and real-world context in order to provide a valuable reasoning or something. Yeah? And I think that's the important aspect to talk about, because if I listen to your explanation about your example with your activity in your company and your report, then if my perception was correct, your experience was very positive in the, let's say, in the explorative part of the story. It was about, okay, did I think about everything? Is there other things to be taken under considerations? I pick out the ones which are valuable for me and I work with them. Yeah? Your experience was negative when you expected this machine to do your job in order to compile it into something which you could communicate to your people. Yeah? And that's where you became actually, or you felt uncomfortable because the result was not to your standards or what you would probably have expected for yourself, because it will fall back to you as the CEO of this company communicating with your people. And I think that's the big struggle or challenge. Yeah.
And another argument to that is validating what you are saying. It's a good assistant to do the jobs. The heavy lifting, it is still not capable of doing, right? Now, the second thing
is not replace the job.
Right. The second thing, what you were saying, is very similar to any relationships. And if anybody who's married knows, communication is key. If you can't communicate properly, you won't get the good results. They call it prompt engineering. We call it communication, right? You communicate with the computer or the AI models in the right way.
There's one I was thinking all the time, because we are comparing it with humans, and I think it's not bad, this comparison. But also taking your example and sticking with that. If you would have this interaction with your assistant, he or she, when you will ask, because the thought process was happening in your brain and not in his or her brain. So how should the other person know what your brain has decided to include and exclude? But that thing in a human interaction, if you would come and say, Carsten, I'm your assistant, you ask me, Carsten, can you please summarize and write a memo for the company so that the hiring process becomes clear? I would ask you, hey, Sam, tell me, we were talking about it since 3 days. You never gave me feedback where your focus is on. You never gave me feedback on your real thought process and your priorities. Please tell me what are your priorities, and I'm happy to put the memo together. And eventually that step, I rarely see this kind of questioning or asking what is clear. And we do that also, as Andreas said before. Like if you do a project, everything is a project. It doesn't matter. It's a product, whatever. If someone tells you do that and it's not clear, you can start. But along the road, you have to ask the questions to make the target clear. But actually, the only really successful projects are where the goal or the target is clear from the beginning. And then you can work towards that goal. And if the system is not, if you're as a human not asking, where do we want to go? What do we want to achieve? You're not gonna get anywhere. And I think that's the same what you see in your example.
May I add something to that? Because I think that's from a philosophical point of view and from the point of view of understanding intelligence, very important. You know? There is this thing isn't this true intelligence? If you get somebody explaining what he wants in his words, and you can understand the context interpretation in order to bring it to the anticipated outcome without clarifying. Yeah? I think that's true intelligence at the end of the day. And that's exactly the struggle. I think if we look at many initiatives, methodologies, and so on, in order to be more efficient, more effective for whatever in work, they go into the direction, the responsibility is all on the side of the sender of the information. Yeah. And if he cannot express it correctly, sharp enough, I like this statement. If it's not 3 bullet points and an emotional picture and everything clear, then it's his fault. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think that having an understanding of the context you are working in or interacting in, having some background knowledge and bringing it into consideration and so on, that's the true intelligence coming in. Yeah? And valuing this in the context of your opponent. Yeah? And I'm not sure if with these systems, how far we are actually. I believe they will become better and better and better in exactly that. But how far we are actually from that. Yeah? And until then, I think many of these models, and it has been stated in that one LinkedIn blog post, until then, these models are best seen as improvisation artists and not necessarily thinkers. Because I think that's where these models are truly good. Yeah. If I'm preparing a slide deck, and I have a tendency to provide a lot of detail, a lot of granularity, a lot of context. Yeah. And for certain people, this is just too much, even though I believe it would be good for them to start the thinking process now and not later. Yeah. But nevertheless, it's too much. And these tools help me substantially in bringing these things down, simplifying, bringing it to the point. Yeah? But that's a very narrow, specialized task. And that's, I think, where you have the best value add. Or they are brilliant. If you think of, I had my nephews here last weekend. Yeah? So I needed to come up with something in order to keep them busy. Otherwise, it gets stressful. Yeah. So I used in preparation, I used ChatGPT and Midjourney in order to provide them with a little booklet with short stories and pictures where they could use colors to do drawings. Yeah? And it's brilliant. It took me 20 minutes in order to do that. Yeah? And otherwise, you would have needed, a drawing artist and somebody very literate and creative and so on. And I think that the question is, where are you using it to the power or to the power of best outcome? And not necessarily, and again, that's, I think, the same with people. Yeah. In a team, you have just people who are maybe more on the creative well-being, everybody feeling good side, and you have other people on the very hard solving problems as soon as possible, no matter if people will have their bad feelings. No? And again, with the AI, you need to use it in the specialized area where it adds most value in your process.
You're right about, most of the things that you did say, right? It's to claim that AGI is inside, I think it's too premature from whatever I have seen. Now, just to clarify some of the things, when I was dictating to the AI, I did say, okay, let's keep this as the important thing. Let's do this, let's do that. And also to clarify that at the end of it, it did get a report when I really did the prompt correctly, right? It did not elaborate in the areas that I wanted it to elaborate, which I just, asked it to elaborate that specific point. So on a productivity basis, I think it has been a big value add for me. But again, for specific tasks, for assistance and support, but I haven't seen a single instance in any of the models that we are seeing right now where we can use it as a general intelligence tool to do anything.
Sam, let me ask you the following question. What's your expectation? I had a conversation with the CEO of a big international company last week. And he said, I hired here a consultancy for some strategy work in order to help me. But, with consultancies, you need to be aware you cannot outsource the thinking. You can outsource the working. Yeah. And I would go even a step further, which is maybe you can outsource the thinking, but you cannot outsource the understanding and the concluding. Yeah. So what is your expectation when you work with an AI in the task you performed before? Yeah. Is your expectation that actually the AI does your thinking, your concluding, your understanding? Or is the expectation that it helps you in order to do the same?
It's a very good question, but the expectation from the AI keeps evolving as you see the capabilities coming in, right? So 3 months ago, the thing that I did right now with AI and discussing that strategy and saying, is this working? I would never have done. So it's not a question of, is there an end objective? As the capabilities increases, I can find ways of making it work for me, including in taking serious decisions and validating objective data and coming to an objective decisions. These are all things that would really keep evolving as we go along, right? So that is not the answer. As human beings, we are naturally inclined to make use of the available resources to us. And the more capable the resources, the more we become creative in how to use it. And our own horizons will expand. Our ambitions will rise further. So, or raise further, rather than rise further, right? So, that probably for me is not the right question to ask, is what is the capacity of the AI and to what level you can go with it? I think that's where my thinking is right now. And, like I said, if I can produce better resources or better solutions for my customers using that kind of resources, there is no limit to that, right? How much I can make life easier for them. So I guess that's a very succinct answer. And I think we have done a pretty good discussion on this, unless you guys have anything else to add to this discussion today. It's one paper.
Yeah, I think I would have to add one thing to it, which I think is very interesting. And it has kind of, I did a little bit of research in that context now in preparation. One is, and since this article or this paper or this study was from Apple, yeah, one thing is my favorite story I keep telling people. Yeah. There is famous research when it comes to the value of digital products, the value of computers and so on, which has been done in the 1970s, 80s. And there was, and you can find this on YouTube, a famous speech of a guy called Steve Jobs at MIT in a time when he was not with Apple in 1992. where he explained, and he was citing some of this research, and he explained that actually all companies are spending at least at that time 2% of their revenue in IT. And there are winners and losers. Yeah? Even the ones investing more are not necessarily the ones adding more value. And in these studies, they figured out that only the ones are truly creating value who are investing these IT investments into operational productivity. So into something which automates, which supports their core business processes in order to generate business value. And the others, they are investing in things like these tools, things like these tools, or whatever, which are just tools and which are just adding to the playground. Yeah? And I think that's, in the context of all these AI capabilities we have today, a very important thing. Yeah? You can use it in order to just spend your time and have more things in your brain, or you can apply it in operational processes in order to generate true productivity. The second thing I would like to add in order to conclude, we had our last episode on AI in healthcare. And we talked about drug discovery and so on, and that these generic models, they will revolutionize drug discovery and so on. I did a little bit of research on that. And if you see what big pharma companies, what kind of partnerships they built, yeah, in order to leverage on that recently, yeah, there are some companies involved which are very successful at the moment in this context, who have they were founded in 1990 or something. And their models are based a lot on understanding nature, understanding physics, and so on. So it's actually a total different path of computational capability, which yields into these results. Yeah. So I think, and that's maybe the bottom line message, we need to be careful with these generic artificial intelligence models when applying them to whatever the problem might be, because every problem is only solvable if you know the boundaries and the limitations of these problems. Yeah? And I think, and that's my last statement, I think it's very dangerous if we are waiting for this omnicompetent general AI who does everything, who replaces everything. I just believe that it will not be.
Oh, no, you cannot leave it at that, because I have to respond to that, right? Again, going back,
will be our next episode.
Oh no, just this statement, because this is important, right? Going back to Steve Jobs, what he said, and the concept of operationalizing ID is making it successful. We have been doing that, right? And so what we are talking about, and the healthcare conversation we had. So the first place where AI really started to make is the analytics side, data analytics and predictive modeling. Now, we discussed last time, agentic AI is where the operational side is going to become most effective. And that's what my company is doing with blueBriX, the healthcare agentic AI for care management, patient engagement, and the revenue cycle. There's a lot of inefficiencies that can be reduced by that. What we are talking about is not that. We agreed with each other, at least to an extent, that specialized functions and other things, AI has become really good. What we're talking about, the next level, which is the AGI, where you asked also about what is my objective, or what is my expectation. Even coming to the decision-making part of it, right? Which is where it is also going to be used in military uses, right? Where autonomous vehicles, it's a big thing and they're already using it, where it even has the decision-making power to execute people, to kill people, right? So that's where we have, I think when they're talking about AGI, general intelligence, and all these areas, have we reached that point? Or is it all just being built on the success of this operational side, which may not be the right paradigm for developing the AGI? I think that's what I am coming at, and I may be biased because I always thought, and if you go back and look at our first conversation, I was talking about pattern and probability is what they call it AI, right? Which could be. What do you think, Carsten, before we roll this up?
Yeah, it's difficult to me. It really comes down to the point, what do we expect? And if you pick up your point of we wanted to make decisions on our behalf, we are already there. However, we have achieved it because we have, this morning, I just heard in the radio, I don't remember the company's name, but the robo taxis, they're having 1,500 vehicles and operating 250,000 transportations per week. And these are vehicles which are running autonomously without the driver, without anyone making a decision. They are already making the decisions for us. They make a decision.
For specialized area, we agreed on that. For transportation, we are talking about AGI. You were talking about
yes. What you want to make it different? Like why should AGI has to be also very specialized in that particular setting? What do you want the AGI to do different with the robotaxi? Should it consider the person which is crossing the street, having all the knowledge about the family background and blah, 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 and say, okay, sorry, dude, you're 87 years old. You have multiple cancers and whatever, God knows what. So I'm going to run you over because the people which I'm transporting now, whatever, maybe it's an emergency car. We can make it even more dramatic. The person is only going to survive if I drive you over and I'm within the next 2 minutes in the hospital or whatever, it will be always very specific at the end of the day. And humans are also, like, as we also elaborated, the ultimate everything knowing genius never existed. Even if you pick people like Einstein or God knows what, they also had their very specific field and had certain incapabilities, because also part of intelligence is emotion, as also Andreas pointed out. You have the different characters and you have to have these different characters in order to make a team work. Do we expect that the AGI plays all at the same time? It's going to be schizophrenic. It has to play these different characters and roles and responsibilities and specificities in its individual situations. And if you take in healthcare, there's, I just had the conversation 2 days ago with someone where like with this new drug, it would be so meaningful to have an application telling the people how they should eat, how they should move. It would be much more sustainable. Yes, it would be indeed. But for your pharma company, let's be honest, it's not. Because if you do that, there will be no revenue with the new drug. So no one has interest. And if I have a generic AI thinking about that, what it's going to do, it's going to spin in circles because it cannot make a decision. So at the end of the day, you have to have a priority. Sell the drug for a shitload of money or cure the population. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. That was why I was smiling, because we got Carsten back. But duck, and I'm like, where is our Carsten? And now here you have it. I think I should say more provocative things so that we do, right?
It only took you 6 months.
Yeah, sorry. No, but yeah.
I think you're pointing out, if I think about it, you're pointing out an important aspect. And that's a little bit, I think that's, we don't know where this whole thing is going. And there is a certain fear that a artificial and machine intelligence could take over or take power over us, given such generic, omnicompetent capabilities. Yeah. Me as a human in daily life, I can decide I want to interact with this guy or with that guy. And in order to achieve that goal, I have to with this guy, but even though I don't like to. Yeah. So I have to decide, do I want to achieve this or not? Huh? With this general purpose, omnicompetent AI, we don't know what their objective is. Yeah? And at some point we cannot escape anymore. And I think that's probably the scary things. And now the big thing is, and we are going back to regulation, coming out of pharma, medtech industry. I'm very familiar with that. But at the end of the day, it's a question if humanity allows these developments to evolve wherever they could go with the risk of losing control, or if humanity manages to keep the good things, to apply the powerful things in a powerful and responsible manner. And if it's even possible to set such guardrails in order to keep a certain ethical control, because that's what it is at the end of the day. If the self-driving car has to decide, so there is a cat and an old woman, somebody, and I have no other option. Do I pick the cat or the woman? That's an ethical decision.
And I think it's even I made a comparison for my kids because they were asking, Daddy, is AI really so dangerous? And going to the point what you said, Sam, if we have really the omnipotent, all-knowing AI which has the ability for decision making, and you go there and ask a question which is very simple and is supposed to be good and save the planet, which is, please tell me what I'm supposed to do and execute on it in order to solve the climate problems and the global warming situation. The system might come to the conclusion mankind is the problem. And then you're in a Terminator scenario. It was a question with a very good intention, but if you give this omnipotent solution the capability to start nuclear weapons or whatever, robotic armies or whatever will be then, or release some lethal viruses to evaporate mankind from Earth, it's gonna do it. So we are not going to be in a situation where we cannot put any guardrails or limitations or whatever. Else, it's just another step of evolution. It's just then technology. Because let's be honest, the nature will always solve it. And now it's just in a digital way. And we have created it.
Did you guys read that article about alignment training? So I don't remember, is another leading voice in the AI industry. And he was talking, and he was on the Bloomberg Tech, and he wrote an article, I think in the Wall Street Journal. He says the way out of this is to have alignment training for AI models, is to align with our values. Instead of training models more and more on the traditional way, they had to do alignment modeling, which is what even CCP, China is doing, that to make sure that they do that alignment modeling, which is you can infuse our values and ethics into the models as well, or any other things that we want, right? So it's also part of the inferencing, modeling, and all those kind of things. So when we talk about AI training, it's not just one monolithic thing. There is different layers and flavors that can actually train it. Why are you smiling, Pastor?
Because look, what are the right or wrong values? If you say China has different values compared to our culture. there is no omnipotent existing value all over the world.
Be based on their alignment.
Yeah, but look, there was this simple, I don't remember who it was and when it was, but there was this, I just remember a story because we were talking about nuclear weapons. There was this idea of, in order to avoid all the potential leaders, meaning in the Cold War times, which had the ability to press the button to implant the button to press and do the, say, command to release the weapons, to put that inside of a body of a person, which is always walking around with the president. So in case the president has the idea to start the nuclear weapons where he has no connection with, and the thing somewhere explodes and kills millions of people eventually, the president has to kill intentionally this person first before pressing the button. How often do you think this would happen? It's most likely not going to happen. Or maybe some crazy, I don't know, dictators in Africa which don't care about human lives, maybe they're going to do it. Or somewhere else, maybe not in only Africa, but somewhere else in the world. There's crazy people which do it. Maybe it's not working. And so if you put values in that system, there's always people which have different values. This is why we have the war in Israel and in Iran, most likely, or we have it already with Russia and Ukraine and God knows where. I don't know how many wars we have in the world right now. There is more than 50, most likely, ongoing. It's always. And the moment you put that on that technological level, you still have to solve the same problems, and there will be still always people which have a bad intention and different values compared to us. Who are we that we say our values are the right ones? Maybe their values are the right ones if we are all wrong. I don't know.
Welcome back, Carsten. I think we have run out of time now. I think we'll continue this on another conversation, but thank you both for today's very spirited conversation. Carsten, albeit late, you joined it. Thank you very much. And thank you all guys for watching.